I've been so excited for today's talk for like so many reasons, but
Amazing.
primarily to, help people understand that there's somebody like you out there.
That's so nice. Yeah, it's God, I'm excited to talk about this too. I kind of forgot that what we were talking about, and then I was reading about it just earlier, and I was like, sex and trauma, perfect, because it's really like a never-ending journey, and it's been a thing for me lately. So I'm excited to.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Yeah, because I was reading your when I was reading your about page, you were saying not too long ago this was like the beginning of your journey. So you've just kind of like you're still blossoming, but you've blossomed recently, right?
Yeah, this whole thing happened for me probably, in a really big way 4 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and I think like trauma healing is healing. It's never healed. And yeah, I haven't been in partnered relationship in a couple of years, and that's happening for me again. And yeah, you know.
Right. Right. So you're facing your shit again and having to work through triggers and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good. It's like, wow, okay, here we go.
Yes. I feel like we're just going to jump right in because we already have. So, welcome, Katrina. It's so great to have you here. For everybody who's watching, I really just stumbled across Katrina's work through Rachel Melinda. She did an interview with you. And you're muted still. There you go, Katrina. Yeah, so Rachel Melinda interviewed you on her podcast, and I was just like, wow, this is what an interesting, beautiful topic to explore. And I started doing a deep dive into your website, and so much resonated with me because it's, one of those things when you find the right coach, it's like, oh my God, they get me. They're telling my story. Everything makes so much sense. I don't feel broken and alone. And I see light at the end of the tunnel, which is like, oh, especially when it comes to sex. It's like we all want sexually fulfilling, healthy, happy relationships, right? So a little formal intro. Katrina Marie is the founder of My Orgasmic Life, and she's based here in Toronto, and she is an international sexual empowerment coach. She's worked with Betty. What's Betty's last name, Katrina?
Dodson.
Dodson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the claim to fame most recently is the Goop interview, right? Where she is the masturbation course.
Yeah, yeah.
And
She's been doing this work since the 70s, so it was really cool when Goop picked it up. And yeah, she's the mother of masturbation.
I love it. I love it. So when I was reading your blogs and starting to understand that, really diving into kind of being vulnerable enough to sexually pleasure ourselves the way that we would want to have sex with somebody, that like vision of I want that really connected, passionate, beautiful sex, but we always look for it externally. And I was like, oh my God, I'm that girl that grabs my vibrator and just stays on my clit and doesn't like seduce myself, or it's always like aiming for the orgasm in like 5 minutes or less, right? And it made me realize, oh my God, you are not connected to your body. And there's so much shame that came up around the idea of sexual pleasure for me. And
Mm.
I'm sure that's a really common thing with the women that you work with. So I'd love to just dive in and ask, what is behind that shame of self pleasure?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So Betty uses this term called pleasure anxiety, and I, you know, I think there's something to be said about how comfortable we are being neutral, like flat affect around other people, and even negative. Like it's almost more comfortable to be irritated or just not feeling great, and to be witnessed in that, we're fine with it. But something about being like uncontainedly joyful, exuberant, silly, that's like there's a lot of safety that's required in order for us to go to these places. So I think from a systemic perspective, we don't feel very safe with one another, which is sad. And when we look at our sexual relationships with ourselves, it's just very telling, like how we're connecting with ourselves. And I think it's a reflection of our approach to life. Like
Mm.
a lot of people, we've been conditioned to be very goal oriented, to achieve success. And we can do that with our vibrator in like a minute, some people, and that's great. Like that's a whole, still the same flow of, I mean, not the same flow, but similar flow of happy hormones, oxytocin. So it feels good to do it. And it's like scratching an itch. And we feel like, okay, like I don't think any orgasm is a bad orgasm. But I think what we're deeply hungry for is, like you said, connection. And there's so much fantasy we build up around having that with another person. And when we're in that dreaminess of falling in love or falling in lust with someone, that's easy to access, but that fades if we aren't at the source of our connection. If we are in individual, connected, deep, grounded relationships with ourselves, and then we nourish like a beautiful ecosystem for ourselves, and then invite other people into that bring their own treasures, then we can have really co-created, rich, beautiful sex that's not dependent on someone bringing us the pieces that we're missing. Because when that happens, there's a lot of codependency that comes up, and it's also not a safe place for people to be, because they have to bring you something or else it's not going to be fun. So it's pretty revolutionary, and I think it's an act of community care to figure out how to really love and enjoy the process of seducing yourself and making love to yourself in all the ways.
Yeah. So I love that you use the polyvagal theory in your coaching with your clients. For those of you who are watching who don't know what the polyvagal theory is, Dr. Stephen Porges has been studying the vagus nerve for about 40 years, and he's really helping to change the way trauma victims or people who go through heightened periods of stress in their life, and that changes our nervous system. He gives really concrete ways on how to nurture the nervous system back into a state of connectivity, basically, where you're safe in your body and you feel at home. And I think that work is branching out, kind of like, tentacles off an octopus, where it's like, okay, we're tapping into our relationship with food surrounding the polyvagal theory, or money, or exercise. And sex is such a massive primal part of us, that why wouldn't we look at nurturing the polyvagal system, or the vagus nerve, through sex as well? So what would an example of somebody who doesn't feel at home in their body, doesn't feel grounded or connected, what's one example of helping somebody to find that connectivity and that groundedness?
Yeah, I would start by considering that your body is like a separate thing from your mind, like almost like an entity, and to consider that you need to have consent between your mind and your body. So you might think like, oh, I'm going to masturbate tonight, and then you reach for your vibrator. What about if you just took like your hands to your body and like asked your body, like, okay, what do you need right now? What would you like? And just taking that moment to pause and actually ask, and then honor whatever answer you get. I think that's the number, like that. I think that's a beautiful place to start connecting to your body and honoring the wisdom of your body, so that you can start to build trust with your body. Because so much of the way that we do sex is people are having sex for all sorts of different reasons, and they're not even thinking about why they have sex. So you might be having sex to feel connected to your partner. You might be having sex to feel desirable in your physical body. There's so many different reasons. And so you might just be doing those automatically. And so it's like anything, when we're using a substance or an activity to soothe our nervous system without actually being in our body and seeing if our body wants to be a part of that, then that's addiction, And I think a lot of us, like, if you look at like Dr. Gabor Mate's theories around addiction, we're not actually addicted. Our nervous systems are just shot, and we're looking for regulation. And orgasms can be a sense of regulation, but when we're looking for like deep regulation, like healing, like longer than 5 minutes worth of regulation, be with your body, ask it what it needs. And the second piece I would say beyond, embodied consent would be expand your idea of what sex is. I suggest that the concept of just exchanging your sexual energy with something or someone, with yourself, but it's just sexual energy. So that could look like, using, if you're familiar with polyvagal theory, vocal toning and breathing is super helpful. So it could be like just like gently touching yourself and like for 5 minutes, and that can be sex with yourself. We need to expand our ideas of what sex is, because the way we've been sold sex, marketed sex, that doesn't work for a lot of people. Definitely not as an entry point, especially for people who have histories of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Because when I think about the people that I've had sex with and what I'm willing to give them in terms of presence and nurturing and wanting to create a safe feeling and just really give, it makes so much sense to think, why wouldn't we reparent ourselves sexually, in the sense of like checking in with ourselves? What do we need? What would make us feel good? It really is reparenting in a way, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's where Betty's work is so remarkable, is she really believes the foundation of our sexuality is our sexual relationship with ourself. And when there's a crack in that foundation between our sexual relationship with ourself, our masturbation, that's going to affect all the other relationships that are on top of it. So when we go back to looking at just, me and me, what's going on here, it's such a grounding thing, especially, right now I'm entering in a new relationship, and it's like, whoa, this is super fun. And also like all my trauma again. And whoa, like it's a lot. And so coming back to myself and dating myself and being in sexual relationship with myself reminds me that like, that I know who I am. I know that I'm bringing so much beauty to the table, and that I am not dependent on this person for this quality of love. It's really interesting when you start getting into attachment theory and trauma and sex at the same time. It's like, wow, that's kind of, I'm interested in that right now.
Yeah. I just picked up the book Attached. I just started reading it last night.
Oh, you're going to love it. Yeah.
I think it's going to blow my mind.
Attachment theory I've only been digging into it in the past few months, and really seeing how just childhood stuff plays out in adult relationships. I also really recommend the book Getting the Love You Want.
Oh, cool.
I think it's by Hendricks Harville. I forget. Getting the Love You Want. It's written by a couple. They're really awesome, and they created imago therapy, and it's really great. So those are my tools.
Yeah, I'll pick that one up next. I am like back into a reading phase. I feel like when I hear you talk, I feel freedom. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, I feel a lot of freedom because, growing up, everybody's trauma is different. But, really it's that experience of not being safe in your body for some reason. And we find these coping mechanisms, right? And there's a lot of shame associated with trauma, complex trauma, different kinds of traumas. There's often shame that will ensue. And, growing up, I really all of the types of addictions you could have, I've had. And it's funny breaking apart that definition of addiction is, it's not always a chemical, where you're like a heroin addiction or cocaine addiction. It is that need to constantly self-regulate with something outside of ourselves, right? So when I hear you speak and I think about the shame that is associated with a lot of people who maybe use drugs as a way to connect sexually, or alcohol, and it's the only time that they might be able to fully just kind of relax and let go and be in the moment. But without drugs and alcohol, maybe somebody wouldn't want to have sex with the light on or have their genitalia seen. There's a lot of shame around genitalia, you know, guys' penises not being the right size, or girls' labia not looking, you know, like they do in pornos, let's say. And it really keeps people kind of locked up and in this cycle of, well, I need the drugs or I need the alcohol in order to actually access that feeling of freedom. So for somebody who might still be in that holding pattern, what is a way or a couple ways that somebody could be brave enough to let go of that shame, like just kind of dip their toe in the water of sober sex or whatever that looks like, connected sex? What could that look like?
I really recommend doing bodysex online if you're a woman with a vulva. There's something healing that happens in relationship when we are with another person and we just hold the intention of like, okay, I'm ready to let go of shame. And then to actually just be in your nudity with, and then be guided into accessing your sexual energy from this place, and actually sitting with shame. Like if you feel shame, you got to sit with that, you got to feel it, like that's what's happening. Yeah. So it's a program that we've been given from our parents, from media, from our religion, from, you know, the dumb boy in like grade 7 who like made fun of you for having, you know, popcorn nipples or something. Okay, like we all have like our things that have really stuck with us, and to be like, I am mine first, and like how can I be for me, and how can I like me for me? I think that's the beginning of shedding shame, because if you can't be unashamed naked by yourself, yeah, you're gonna need some substances to like make that work for a shared experience. I think another thing, if you, and I'm like, I have a pretty liberal perspective on like drugs and alcohol. If that's giving you access, I would recommend just talking about whoever you're having sex with and be like, I have a lot of shame around my body, and that's why I need to use these things, and it's working for me. Can you not make yourself wrong for that and actually be like, wow, I'm so scared of being seen. I'm grateful for these, you know, these human gifts of, you know, whatever your flavor is, tequila, weed, like whatever you're using. Can you actually take a layer of shame off and be like, wow, that's really smart that I figured out this workaround to get the connection that I want, and then try experiencing the connection without that, you know, 7th layer of shame, and just slowly start to peel it off. You know, maybe you have stoned sex for a month and you're open with your partner about the fact that you're ashamed, and you know, I've written blog posts on how to support a partner with trauma. Maybe you just forward that to them, and you know, when they notice you dissociating, they start asking, hey, where'd you go? I'm right here. You're amazing. We don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Oh my God, now all of a sudden you're having like healing stoned sex with your partner, right? So it's like, I'm really passionate about meeting people where they're at. And if you need to be getting drunk or getting high in order to have sex, I'm so sorry that that's so hard for you. And you're a smart cookie for figuring out how to get what you need. And let's figure out how to titrate that so that you can have that more easily and you can be more yourself sooner rather than later.
Honestly. I love that so much, because I think, you know, working in the mental health and addiction world, there is a lot of talk about how do we get you off of substances in order to be healthy. But I love what you're talking about, where you can be healthy in all the variations and all the phases of how you're experiencing life. The language that you just used, that coaching cue of, you know, being able to say, hey, I experience a lot of shame around my body and I use, you know, weed or tequila to be able to fill in the blank. People don't have often that language to even use, right? So having a sex coach to be able to say, hey, what about this language? What about this statement? How does that feel, trying that on? That in itself, I just felt like shame meter, boom, you know, went way down.
Yeah, and that's really my approach with my clients as well. Like, I've been through this stuff myself. Like,
Yeah.
even with my current new partner, we were stoned, I think, like almost all the times that we've been intimate thus far. And I've gotten triggered as fuck all of those times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until yesterday that I was like, okay, I want to have like a real trauma talk now with you when we're not stoned and we're not in the middle of the night in bed.
Yeah.
Um, because I really want to go to deeper levels with you. And I know that I don't trust you because you just don't have the skills right now to support me.
Yeah.
And I feel uncomfortable, like I shouldn't have to teach you. Like I'm even kind of angry that I have to teach you.
Yeah.
Um, but I know you care about me a lot. So would you be open to that? It's like that's what healthy love actually looks like. It's like
Right.
figuring out what you need. And if someone doesn't know how to care for you perfectly, that doesn't mean that they're not for you. That just means that they need some information on how to care for you. Um,
Yeah.
we're just doing our best, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Like, let's let ourselves off the hook. Let's just kind of,
And be honest and learn how to talk about it with each other so that we can heal with each other and meet each other where we're at with as little shame as possible. Because I think that's really where, I mean, think about any other substance. Like when you take the power away from it and when you give voice to your shame around it, it really, I just feel like things are much less like gripped when we're not making a big deal out of it and we're not making ourselves massively wrong for it. It's like the second layer of shame. It's like we're ashamed about the thing and then we're ashamed about having the thing. Like it's too much. We gotta we gotta peel
if
it back.
anything's a boner killer, that would be a major boner killer, you know?
Shame is the biggest boner killer for sure. Yes.
Definitely, definitely. So, your blog, the one that I grabbed, like I loved the most that I've read so far was the one on obligatory sex.
Mm.
And sorry, I'm kind of merging two thoughts here, but some of the messaging that I'm getting from you is okay, obligatory sex, there's language and a whole process to kind of navigate through that so that you're honoring yourself and really healing those sexual traumas. But also, shit, I don't want to lose it. Oh, yeah. So the power of self pleasure so that you're not hungry and you're not settling or putting yourself in situations where you're re traumatizing yourself, let's say. So, what are some ways that you would recommend somebody to know, like, okay, these are some of the signs of somebody who is safe to start to engage with sexually for you? Like, how should you feel in your body or certain language you'd be looking for, you know?
Oh, great question. I think there's like a longing in you, and this is going to be different for every person
Yeah.
because desire non-concordance, Dr. Emily Nagoski came up with that term, and that's a really important thing for people to know about is that just because you get wet or you're getting aroused, like you're having an erection, women have erections, um, doesn't mean that you actually want something. Your body can get aroused and it's not in concordance with your actual desire. So you want like your heart to be in it, you want your pussy to be in it, and you want your intellect to be in it. You want all three. When all three are there, it's like, okay, cool. And then also just knowing about your own ways of responding to trauma, like knowing that desire might shift because you're getting closer to something you're scared of. So I would ask, like, is this person okay with big feelings? That's like beginning of my online dating thing. It's like, hey, what are you looking for? I'm looking for someone, I've got big feelings and I'm looking for someone who's not afraid of that. Just straight up. I think that's the first thing. Someone that's not going to be afraid and run away from your feelings coming up. Someone that cares about you and asks questions about you. Um, Someone that you feel like your nervous system can be relaxed around. And there's things, like that facilitate desire. So if those things are there for you, but you don't actually feel like turned on by this person, because you might have a history of getting turned on by people who are really bad for you because you're really familiar with that dynamic. And so that creates a lot of intensity for you. And so you just keep having sex with assholes who don't care about you. That's really real.
Yeah.
And so if you've got like someone who cares about you, who asks questions about you, who's okay with big feelings, someone who's okay to talk about these things, because if you can't talk about sex, you shouldn't be having sex. That's a really big thing. So if those things are there, just remember that like light touching, like that does a lot. Just like explore someone, smell them. That's like tune into these primal things of around their edges, their periphery, before you get into it, and see if you can create a container where you're like, hey, intimacy is like kind of nerve-wracking for me. It is for everyone, by the way. Like, so that just creates such a even playing ground by saying that, and be like, can we just be really honest with each other about how we're feeling? So I think that creates a lot of trust. And then other than like light touching, sharing personal vulnerable things with each other, that fosters feelings of desire as well. If you've struggled with dating and finding good people, I highly recommend the book Deeper Dating by Ken Page. Really good at deconstructing like who you're attracted to, why you're attracted to them, and like, I know these kitties are great, and how to how to be attracted to healthy people, because feelings are really big, and if you just have a tendency to be attracted to people who are not good, I'm with you, and you can change it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I think it's so empowering to know that people can change their patterns.
Yeah.
It's totally possible. Your book recommendation is amazing. I'll definitely check it out, but I'd love to know, and genuinely, this, for the viewers, this isn't a plug that that I'm just trying to plug Katrina's work, but I genuinely want to know how are you, what courses do you have available for people right now during COVID where they can start to learn about these things? Is there one or two, or is there several different ways that you support?
So there's Bodysex Online, which I already mentioned, which it's a pre-recorded class. It's a nude masturbation class. So you're just seeing me on video, and then you're guided into participating in it. And it's 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's designed to be done in one go, but it has the benefit of you can just hit pause and like cry or journal or whatever you need to do. And that's such potent, experiential, and accessible. Like it really meets you where you're at. And almost 400 people have taken that. A whole bunch of different people, all different kinds, ages, orientations, and have had amazing results. So I really recommend that, just to have a practice of starting to have a meaningful sexual relationship with yourself. And then if you are a trauma baby and you know that's real for you, and you've got some work to do around that, and you want some experiential practices around basically expanding your nervous system so that you're able to feel pleasure, because when we've been maxed out, there's no desire for anything else. So we have to figure out how to process what we've already got rattling inside of us, so we can clear some space for pleasure to live. And then I recommend the class Feel the Feels. And then I'm in the middle of making a new course, which I'm really excited about, on ecosexuality. And this is really exciting to me, because this is sexuality that's accessible for anyone, regardless of ability, access to humans. Like, as long as you've got nature, even like nature sounds, you can have an erotic experience with the energy of aliveness that exists in nature. And it's kind of like audio guided meditation, so that you can go out in nature and connect with these things and actually experience the connection, the aliveness that we have when we exchange our sexual energy with another living thing, which is, some of the most healing energy out there. We deserve to feel connected and alive, even if we feel completely alone in the world, nature has got your back. So start having amazing sex with yourself, with nature, and then when you're ready, find a good person that's not afraid of big feelings, that cares about you. Tell them about your trauma, and boom, you're gonna have to do some work, but healing is like vastly possible inside of that framework. But it starts with you and you. Yeah.
Yeah. So many, like, I'm rapid fire thinking questions, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. Okay. So last question, because I know we have to wrap soon.
Yeah.
Maybe last question. Maybe we can get it out of it.
Okay.
But when I'm hearing you talk about, all the different ways that you can connect sexually, obviously it's really important, right? Whether it's with yourself or nature or another person. Why do you think sex is so important for us? And you kind of just answered it, but I'd love to hear a little bit more on that.
Yeah, sexual energy is creative energy. And when we look at what we want as humans out of relationships, it's to feel alive. And in that aliveness, we feel connected to something greater than ourselves. I really think sexuality is like the OG spirituality, where you're connecting to something much bigger than yourself through accessing the freaking energy that brought you to this place, like sexual energy brought you here. It is the epitome of creative energy. And as humans, we're creators and we're social creatures. So sex is vital, not only from that spiritual perspective, but also from the design of our body physiologically. So many organs in our pelvis, and that's like the base for all of our other very vital organs. We need to be getting blood flow in our pelvis. We need to be using those muscles. It's the base of our whole torso. Our pelvic floors are diaphragms. They need to be like moving with breath. And I'm not sure if you all feel the same way, but the world's kind of wild. Like it's a lot right now. And I wish I could just be in therapy for like an hour every day. That would be amazing if someone could just be like giving me that high quality of attention. And that, I think, is the most nourishing thing, is just high quality attention. That's why we go see massage therapists. That's why we see therapists. Just pay attention to me and care about me in a really high quality way. Sex with yourself or with another person, like when done with healthy people who care a lot about each other, it's that. Like, to decolonialize, to decapitalize, to reclaim sex as like, this is mine, this is free, I'm going to figure out how to have it really nourish me. It's so important. I think it's a radical thing. I think it's like revolutionary, it's political, it's therapeutic. We got to have sex. We got to have sex with ourselves, with each other, get inspired, feel connected. That's my sales pitch for masturbating.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sold.
Great. And that being said, like I used to think I was asexual. And like when I was married, I really wished that my partner would just stop wanting to have sex and then I could just cut that part out of my life. And it's kind of like meditating. Like the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I fucking hate this. And then like the places that you're able to access when you can actually be in stillness with your breath are like, woo, deeply therapeutic. So if you're resistant to sex, don't write it off. You just might need a different entry point to get in there, especially if you have a history of trauma, which basically everyone does. So make it work for you. If you're not liking sex, you're probably just not liking the way you're having sex with yourself or another person.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My final thought here, as you're explaining this, when I work with my clients, I really pulled away as a nutritionist. I pulled away from being hypervigilant around food at all, like loose guidelines and really just nurturing the nervous system. So a lot of people, when they want to become healthy or heal their bodies after trauma, they go to usually exercise, I find, exercise or food, where they're like, I'm going to get healthy and I'm going to get my life on track and I'm going to do all the things. But what I'm finding now is a lot of my coaching is around kind of getting people pointed in the right direction for embodied healing or bioenergetic healing, really learning how to clear traumas from their body and get really in touch with it. So I feel like as I'm hearing you explain all of this, like you said, it is political and it is personal and it is, you know, there's so much going on around sex. And because it is embodied, this would be a really beautiful place, I think, for people to start their trauma healing journey. Because once you get really connected to yourself and you're unapologetic and you're releasing shame and you're owning who you are and asking for what you need and all of those beautiful things, that's going to naturally translate into other parts of your life, right? Where nutrition isn't like rigid and calorie counting. It's like, no, I'm going to intuitively show up with food and I'm going to honor myself and pleasure myself through food. And movement as well. I don't need to kick my ass in the gym and have this crazy 7-day-a-week thing. I'm going to do some of this and do some of that and just listen and lean in. So the embodiment, you know, that 80% of the afferent information coming is from the body to the brain. So it's getting me really excited because I've really been focused on, like me personally, and a lot of people, I've been really focused up here. I'm going to figure out my mental health issues. I'm going to figure out my depression, my anxiety, blah, blah, blah. But getting into the body is often a really scary place. So everything that you've talked about really is kind of like dipping the toe in the water, taking the first few steps, look around, see what feels good, go at your own pace. And this is a really wonderful journey to healing traumas, I would say.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And it's been cool to have kind of almost like a 3-year break from the last time I was dealing with my trauma inside of a relationship to this time. And just seeing how much more resourced I am now, having a much better foundation of a sexual and intimate relationship with myself. It makes such a difference to be self-resourced in this way.
Right. Power.
Mm-hmm.
Power.
Yeah.
You are so awesome. And your kitties are so awesome. What's his name?
This one's still nameless, actually. Yeah, I've just had them for a week, so we're getting to know each other still. But the black fluffy one is Gustav.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom and everything that you shared today. You mentioned a few courses on how people can find you, but you're active on Instagram. I love your Instagram page, which is, go for it.
Yeah, you can find me at My Orgasmic Life on Instagram, or you can read longer form writing on my blog at katrinamarie.com. And yeah, it would be great to hear from you. If you have questions, feel free to DM me. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Cassandra. Oh. Amazing questions.
Oh my God, it's been a pleasure. I hope to do a class with you in person soon. That'd be amazing. All right, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.